It was a starry night in rural Georgia when I decided to embark on a nightmare adventure. The moon was high in the sky and the clock read 2 a.m. when I made my decision. The idea of exploring the abandoned church on the outskirts of town had been appealing to me for a long time. Equipped with my flashlight and a camera, I began my journey. The wind whispered softly through the trees as I approached the old church. It stood majestically, once a place of prayer and community, but now scarred by time and neglect. Most of the windows were broken and the roof had partially collapsed. I entered the church and was struck by a sudden cold that seemed to eat into my bones. The flashlight cut through the darkness as I moved gingerly through the abandoned building. The clock read 2:30 a.m. as I stood in front of the ornate altar that had once been a centerpiece of services. As I pointed the camera at the altar to take a photo, I suddenly heard a quiet but eerie knocking. It came from the direction of the Nav. My heart began to beat faster and I decided to investigate the source of the noise. The footsteps on the old wooden floor echoed through the church as I approached the Nav. Suddenly I saw movement at the edge of my vision. The flashlight trembled in my hand as I aimed the beam in that direction. A shadowy figure stood there, half hidden in darkness. I froze in fear as the figure slowly approached. An icy shiver ran down my spine when I realized it was a person. The clock now read 3 a.m. when the figure finally stepped into the beam of my flashlight. It was a man in dirty and tattered clothes. His face was marked by immersed sadness. He looked at me with empty eyes and began to speak quietly and pained. "Help me," he whispered. "I'm trapped here, trapped in the darkness." I couldn't help but feel repelled by this eerie apparition, but at the same time I was overcome by a mixture of pity and curiosity. "What happened here?" I asked him in a shaky voice. The man began to tell his story. He was captured in this church many years ago, tortured and tormented by unknown forces. His words echoed through the deserted church and I could feel the chill in the air growing. The clock now read 3:30 a.m. when I decided to accompany the man and help him. He led me to a hidden cellar beneath the church, a gloomy place that seemed steeped in dark secrets. The air was stuffy and the smell of mold hung heavily in the air. I discovered a gruesome scene down there. There were signs and symbols carved into the stonework on the walls, and in the center of the room was an ancient altar surrounded by candles. The man explained that dark rituals had been held here to summon the power of darkness. Suddenly we heard an eerie whisper that seemed to come from everywhere. The candles flickered and the symbols on the wall began to glow. The clock read 4 a.m. when I realized we weren't alone. Something dark and sinister was here, and it had discovered us. The man and I escaped from the basement and ran up the stairs, but the darkness seemed to follow us. The church shook as if it were being shaken by an invisible force. The clock read 4:30 when we finally reached the threshold of the church. We stumbled out into the darkness of the night, and the church seemed to collapse behind us. The eerie whispers faded and the darkness retreated. The clock said 5 a.m. when we were safe, but the memory of that scary night will haunt me forever. I could never fully understand what had happened in that abandoned church, but I knew there was something dark and sinister that lurked in the solitude of the night, ready to devour anyone who ventured into its clutches.